Hi everyone, I'm Leah Williamson and I'm here with Dr. Brett Hill for our nourishing conversation tonight. If you can hear us, just give us a little hello in the chat box. The chat box should be down on your right hand side and you can just type in there and say, hello, you can hear us, so we know that you can. And we'll get started in a second once everybody's starting to log into the room. So nourishing conversations, there's just conversations with people about real food, real life, real, those conversations that you have when you're just with somebody and it's flowing and it's great and you both really get it. And that's what I like about a conversation. And that's what I call a nourishing conversation. So that's what we're going to have tonight, a fun, flowing, nourishing conversation about kids, aren't we?
So, sounds like fun.
Yeah, kids are always fun. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone can hear us or not, but if you can, just
we've got no chatters.
No chatters.
We're not that scary, promise.
Oh, there we go. Heather. Hi, Heather. How are you going? That's great. At least someone can hear us.
I hope so. Or she's just being really polite and saying hi. It could be either. Can you hear us, Heather? We just have a one-on-one with Heather. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. All right, just jump in if you here we go. Yes, Margaret can hear us, and same with Leanne. Yes, awesome. Everyone can hear us. Right, we're ready to go. So if you didn't hear me when you first logged in, I'm Leah Williamson. I'm from Brisbane Paleo Group, and I've got with me Dr. Brett Hill, and we're going to be talking about nourishing without nagging and talking all things children and families and food. And welcome, Dr. Brett Hill. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And oh, great. And we're glad to have you. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself so they all know who you are if they don't already.
Absolutely. That's easy. Well, yeah, depending on how much you want me to do. I can go right back to the start. When I was a kid, I was quite lucky in lots of ways. My parents, I grew up with very simple food. Probably wasn't paleo, probably wasn't primal, but it was very simple stuff. We had lots of just simple meals, meat and 3 veg. We had a bit of bread, we had a bit of sugar. I can remember as a kid having my Wheat Bix with like the sugar just poured on top of it, crusted on top. There was heaps of it. And we just had a normal kind of diet, a lot of home cooked stuff, but a bit of processed stuff as well, a bit of, pizza and those sort of things, pastas. And I wasn't a terribly healthy kid. I wasn't a terribly unhealthy kid, but I wasn't a terribly healthy kid. So, growing up, I was probably on antibiotics about half a dozen times a year. And no one seemed to think that was a big deal. I'd go to the doctor, they'd write me out the script for the antibiotic. In fact, I'd go to the doctor and I'd say, you're going to give me amoxicillin, aren't you? They go, well, we need to check up on you first. I'd say, yeah, but we've done this before. You'll give me amoxicillin. Sure enough, at the end of the trip, they'd go, here's a script for some amoxicillin. They used to give me the same thing every single time, half a dozen times a year, and thought nothing of it. And I thought that was a bit weird. By the time I started telling the doctor what he was going to do before he did it, I thought, this just doesn't make sense. You kind of come to that Einstein definition of insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And so I'd always wanted to do something in health. I'd always been fascinated by health growing up. I have a picture on my fridge in my cupboard, I think at the moment, of me that I did when I was year 3. And I said at that stage that when I grew up, I was going to be a physiotherapist. So I wasn't too far off the mark. And so I always wanted to do something in health. I always loved the outdoors as well. I loved camping. I loved fishing. I loved boating. I did Cubs and Scouts and Venturers and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, that meant that, I kind of was fascinated by nature. I was fascinated by natural cycles and how nature worked. And so when I started thinking about what I wanted to do as a career, then doing something, a more natural approach to health just kind of made sense. And the more I started learning about chiropractic, the more it just made sense. If I get my spine functioning right, then my nervous system will function right and my body will be healthier. And that natural approach to health made sense to me. And so as I started learning to become a chiropractor, I started going to these seminars and learn all this amazing stuff. And chiropractors have always talked about, the physical, the chemical, and the emotional stresses and how they can impact on our health. And so as I started learning more about these things, I started thinking about, what made sense in terms of how we ate, in terms of how we moved, in terms of, what we thought. And, I started stumbling across this paleo stuff. In fact, I didn't know it was paleo back then. That was ages ago. But this sort of, more innate way of living, this more in tune with our nature, our natural bodies and the way our bodies were designed to be. And having studied, some stuff at uni, but having studied physiology and learned how the body is supposed to work, it just made heaps of sense, And so I started moving in that direction, and I started changing my diet. I started cutting out sugars, and so without really realizing it, over a period of time, I really transitioned to what we would now know as a paleo diet. At the same time, I started getting some chiropractic care. I noticed some massive changes there. That was, really when I first got adjusted by the chiropractor when I was about 18 years old, I think. And up until then, as I said, I've been on all those antibiotics. I've never had antibiotics since that day. I was having heaps of trouble sleeping. I've slept so much better since that day. I was asthmatic. I haven't had any problems with the asthma since that day. I ran an ultra marathon without any problems. So that was a huge shift for me. But after a period of time, what I realized was I was going to all these amazing chiropractic seminars, listening to all these amazing chiropractors, hearing this incredible information. And my frustration was that I would hear this amazing stuff. I would turn around, I'd walk out of the seminar, and I'd look around at all the people around me and realize that no one else was hearing that stuff. No one else knew what we were talking about inside that room, this amazing information. And so that was kind of what got me really passionate about wanting to share it. And so, from there, I started writing articles for newspapers. I started doing some radio stuff. That kind of spawned into my first book, which was How to Eat an Elephant, which was kind of everything I knew about and understood about health and wellness all rolled into one book, with action steps there to help people, sort of chunk it down and make some change. And then because I'd done that ultra marathon and I did it totally paleo, so I wrote my electrolyte book where I talked all about, what electrolyte drink that I made for myself, without the sugars and the nasties, and how I did that. And then I also wrote a barefoot running book with Kim Morrison, all about that running technique. And that was great. But, obviously by then my kids had come along. And so, that kind of changed everything for me. When my kids came along, my whole focus changed, because all of a sudden, this world around me wasn't just, a world that I wanted to help them get healthier. All of a sudden, this was the world that my kids were going to grow up in, and that for me was massive. Such a massive driving factor, realizing that, the health of everyone around me, the understanding about health of everyone around me was going to be the peer group of my kids, So I started thinking, well, okay, this really is important now. And also understanding that because of the way our society is, that if I didn't teach my kids why they would want to be healthy, why they would want to eat the right stuff, then they were just going to get influenced by everything else around them. And, if you, in our society, if you do what everyone else around you is doing, then you've got a really good chance of being pretty sick. Almost 4 out of 5 adults are chronically ill. They have some sort of long-term health condition. 40% of 15-year-olds in Australia have a chronic disease. So it's now almost the norm for a child to have a chronic disease. These are really lifestyle diseases that in previous generations were virtually unheard of in adolescent populations. So I realized that, I needed to take a more proactive approach to my kids. And as I started doing that, and then, as a result of doing some media around that, I got asked to go on radio and talk about my top 10 tips for getting kids to eat healthy. And I did that, and it kind of went off. We went on radio, we started sharing these tips, and people just loved it. And I got so many questions and so many emails and so many people saying, give us some more information about this. So I kind of was like, well, I'm just going to have to write a book now. And I didn't think I was going to write another book. Like, really, I sort of put everything in my first one. And I was like, I'm done now. I don't have anything else left to say. But I realized this was a topic that was so important. And it was something that was so integral to me and my family and my kids that I just, I realized there was some information there that I just had to share. And so I've written my latest book, Nourish Without Nagging, How to Get Your Kids to Love to Eat Healthy, which is the key. And it's been amazing. Some of the stories I've gotten back already from people and the changes they've made, and I have a feeling some of them might have been on this call tonight who sent me back some feedback, have been phenomenal. And it's just blown me away. In fact, it's blown me away, not just in terms of the changes. I knew that people could make drastic changes by following the stuff in this book, because I know that it works. But the speed at which some of those changes have happened, I had people contact me back saying, well, it's been a week and I've drastically, my kids changing, my kids feeding has just turned upside down, and that has actually blown me away. And And you know, it's all about getting on the same page with your kids and really, you know, working together towards a common goal. And when you do that, and when you have those, you know, conversations with your kids, when you get curious about your kids, you get down on their level and really talk to them about it, it's amazing the results you can get. So that's where I'm up to. How's that?
Yeah,
that was pretty brief for me.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, really, really, really great. So you've got 2 kids. What ages are they?
Yeah, so Tom and Charlotte are 5 and 7. So Charlotte has just started. Last week was her first week in school, which is super cute. She's so excited about it. She came home last week on Thursday night. She was so excited when I picked her up from school. She's like, Dad, I've got homework. It was so cute. She was just bursting at the seams to tell me she was so excited to have homework to do, because she's been watching her brother for 2 years now, you know, coming home, doing his homework, doing the school thing. And so she's just loving it. So yeah, 5 and 7. Yeah.
I love looking down Facebook on the first day of school and seeing everybody's kids all starting for the first time. That's like one of my favorite things to look at.
It was just full of them, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I've met your kids, and they are so well behaved. We went to, I think we're at the Paleo Cafe, and they were quite happy just to sit there and have their, I think maybe a smoothie or something like that, and they were calm and they were great. So you're doing a really good job with them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we try our best. You know, we all have our moments, but you know, they are generally they're pretty good kids. They, you know, they're great with their food. You know, they deal well with that. They eat eat good stuff most of the time, and they're great little kids. You know, I love them to bits. I could brag about them for the next 40 minutes.
That's good, but we won't. But what we might do is talk about some of the tips in your book, you know, and how you've got them to that place where, you know, they will happily sit there and have something from a Paleo Cafe and not even question it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny, you know, I mean, in some ways I've been blessed with my kids, because I came across this information right at the start, you know, before I even had kids. So to a large, you know, my kids have grown up on paleo. That's just what they've done. That's what they know. And so to a certain degree, that's made it a whole lot easier for me. But, you know, having said that, they still have a lot of outside influences now, you know, and as they get older, those increase more and more. And they've certainly been exposed in various different places to various different foods. And, you know, they know now that there's other stuff out there. They see other stuff when they go to the shops or the supermarkets or to school, you know, other kids around them eating different stuff. So they have been exposed to a lot of that stuff. You know, they don't eat paleo all the time. They certainly, you know, they're not, I have the kids 50-50, so they're not with me the whole time. And when they're not with me, you know, they do eat some different stuff as well. So, you know, obviously getting around those, you know, that's made it a really different situation, you know, different scenario. So, you know, it's been really important, and you know, in many ways I'm glad that we sort of got that groundwork in early, and I had a chance to talk to them about, you know, why they should love to eat healthy food. And when it comes down to it, that's really the key, because what I realized pretty early on was that, you know, making my kids eat healthy stuff is one thing, and to a certain degree, when they're younger, you can kind of do that. You can, you know, they just eat what you give them. But as they get older, you know, as I said, they're not always with me. You know, sometimes they're with their mum, sometimes they're with the grandparents, sometimes they're, you know, they're at school. So, you know, so the older they get, the more they're going to be influenced by those outside influences. And so if I'm not there to tell them, well, if they're just doing it because I tell them to, then as soon as I'm not there, guess what's going to happen? You know, they're going to do different stuff. But if I can teach them why they would want to do it, if they get why they're doing it, and if they choose to do it, then that's a totally different situation. So for me, it's all about, you know, having those conversations with them and giving them the information they need to make an informed choice. Because I know that, you know, if they know what I know, then they'll choose what I choose. You know, they're smart enough to know that eating whole, real, healthy food is what's best for them if they're given the right information, that they can make that choice for themselves. So that's really what it's about. You know, I can't force my kids to eat anything. I can't make my kids eat anything, because that's just not going to work long term. But I can give them the right information so that they can make the right choices for themselves, and then, you know, turn it over to them and trust them to do it. Because, you know, when they get it, and kids do get it, kids are so clever, you know, they really are so much more in touch with their body and what's going on, that, you know, if you give them the right information, if you show them in the right way what's going on, then they can really figure it out for themselves. And that makes the whole conversations so much easier. Rather than all of a sudden sitting on opposite sides of the table, battling backwards and forwards, now it's like you're kind of sitting together on the same side of the table, working together towards a common goal. So that's one of the biggest things, is if you can help them understand why they would want to do it, because their motivations are so different to ours. Like, we think we'd love to do it because we'd like them to, maybe not get chronic disease later on in life, but they don't care about that. They have no concept of what that might mean or what that might look like. Even as teenagers, even in my early 20s, I wasn't worried about getting sick. I was like invincible. I can do whatever I want. Right. But if you could figure out what was motivating me, and at that time, it might have been cricket, it might have been sport, it might have been girls, it might have whatever it was that motivated me, then, if you could show me how it was going to help me get what I wanted, then I'm on board. And if you could then demonstrate to me that it does help and make a difference, well, hallelujah, here we go. So it's about figuring out what motivates them as opposed to what motivates you, which means, communicating with them, getting down on their level, getting really curious about them and having great chats with them. And that's really the essence of the book, is getting on the same page with your kids so that you can work towards a common goal, so that you can work together to show them how to love eating healthy food. And when you do that, it's so much easier.
Yeah. And one of your tips in the book is to teach them to judge food by how they feel after, not before or during. And I think that's quite an important lesson as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, much of the stuff that your kids might want to eat that you may not want them to eat, it tastes good. Like, there's no two ways about it. Sugary, sweet stuff tastes good. It looks good. It looks fun. It's got bright colours. It's got their favourite character on the front of it. It's kind of fun. And we shouldn't dodge around that. Like, we should be honest with them and be like, yeah, do you know what? That kind of tastes good. But you can have really honest conversations with them about that as well. Like, it's like, well, that's really fun. It tastes great. You would actually enjoy that right now. But tonight, you might not feel so good. You might feel a bit sick in your tummy. You might notice that you get tired. You might notice that you get cranky and grumpy. Tomorrow we want to go to the park and play. You might find that you don't have as much energy to run around and play chasey. I might catch you easier. So you can start talking to them about how that affects them and how that affects their ability to do the things they love doing. And that's when you really start to change that equation, because you're then showing them, well, yeah, there's one part of it is how the food feels now, but how it feels tonight and how it feels tomorrow and how it feels next week can be completely different. And so, you can give the kids the choice then. So, what I will often do with my kids is I'll say, yeah, look, you've got this food, it'll taste good now, but, this is how you're going to feel tonight. This is how you're going to feel tomorrow or next week. Or what we could do is I could make this other food that's actually a healthier version, often of the same thing. I could make this other food, which is still going to taste great. You're going to love it just as much. I can actually make it in just as brighter colors with some fruit and whatever. You will not only feel great now, but you'll feel great tonight. You'll feel great tomorrow. You'll be faster. I might not be able to catch you when we play chasey tomorrow. Whatever it is that motivates your kids, that's a good one for my kids at the moment. But whatever it is that motivates your kids, you can show them how doing that is going to help them get what they want. And it then just becomes a no-brainer for them. It's like, okay, you can eat those lollies from the supermarket, and they're going to make you feel good now and crappy tonight and tomorrow. Or you can have these, gelatin gummies that I'm going to make you at home. You can actually choose whatever fruit you want. We'll make them. They can be whatever color you want. And they're going to taste great. And you'll feel great tonight. And you'll feel great tomorrow. And the kids go, well, yeah, I want the one that makes me feel great all the time. Why wouldn't I? Yeah. So that's a really great tactic. It's not even a tactic. It's just a really great thing to do with your kids. It's a really great thing to teach your kids, is that, how you feel isn't just, from food. It can affect you for a much longer term. And you need to look at the whole picture. Once again, it's about making an informed choice. If they're choosing foods just based on how they feel as they eat it, they're actually only getting part of the picture. They're actually only getting part of the story. And so they're not then able to make a fully informed choice. And as I said, if you can get them to make a really informed choice, then generally, they'll do good things. They'll make good choices, and that's great.
Yeah, great. So one of the things in our house, I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we have this thing we call the ceremony of eating. And basically it's like getting back to old values where you used to sit down at the table, clear the table, set the table, talk about the food that's on the table, what you're eating, you know, and even a step back from that, getting them to help you prepare the food, and even back before that, knowing where the food comes from and talking to them about that, and turning off all the electronic devices and sitting down and having a conversation, which, you know, this isn't anything new. This is something that you probably did with your parents, but we just seem to have lost our way, you know, through the years.
Absolutely.
To now. Yeah. And do you have a ceremony of eating that you guys kind of go through with the kids?
Well, I talk about it as role modeling. I think it's role modeling because your kids pay way more attention to what you do than to what you say. You know, so you can talk to your blue in the face, but if what you're saying isn't matching what you're doing, then you're not going to get the results. And kids are smart. You know, every one of you with kids knows that your kids are smart and that they see through you, and that you can try and trick them, you can try and con them, but they're on to you, you know? And so if you're not being congruent with what you're saying and what you're doing, they'll know, okay? And as you said, I think the role modeling starts way before you get to the dinner table. You know, the role modeling is, hey, let's plant some stuff in the garden. You know, and you might be in the tiniest studio apartment, but you still can put a pot plant on the sill and grow some basil, you know. And the great thing about that is if you get your kids involved right from the start, you're actually engaging them in the process. You know, you can take them to the nursery, you can pick out the seeds or the plants you want to get. You can, you know, pick out the fertilizer, you can pick out the soil, you can pick out the pot you want to put it in. You know, you're actually engaging and involving in them right from the start. And what the research says about that, what the psychologists would say about that is, you know, if you can get them to take that small step at the start, then they're much more likely to engage in the whole process. Just the act of them picking out a seed from the nursery, you know, is actually going to increase their likelihood of eating that later on, because it's a commitment. It's a small commitment, but it's a commitment. And then, you know, over time they water that, they nurture it, they see it grow, and they're going to be much more likely to want to give it a go and try it, right? And so, you know, you might just have a pot on the sill. You might have a bit more space. You might have a whole bunch of herbs. You know, you might have more space. You might have a veggie patch. You know, you might have heaps of space. You might have a cow. You know, whatever's applicable to you and your house. But, you know, having something there is a great way to start, you know. But then you can also do it at the markets or the supermarkets or wherever you shop. You know, you can take your kids with you and say, hey, kids, we're making a stir fry tonight. What do you want in it? You know, go and pick 3 vegetables each, you know, and they might pick some funky things. You know, you might end up with watermelon in your stir fry. You know, you might end up with something a bit weird. But, you know, sometimes you sort of just guide them a little bit and help them in the right direction. Or sometimes you go, oh, what the hell? We'll have watermelon in our stir fry tonight. It's not the end of the world. And, you know, you let them be involved in the process. Let them learn, you know, learn what the foods are. You know, first time I said to my kids, can you go find me a sweet potato? They were like, what's a sweet potato? It's like, great. Here's a learning, you know, so then they learn which one's the sweet potato, which one's the potato, which one's the broccoli, which one's the, you know, and so now I go to the supermarket and say, okay, Tom, can you go grab me 3 capsicums? You know, Charlotte, can you grab me 2 onions? So it makes your shopping heaps easier too. They go and grab all the little things for you. It's great. So that's what you can do. Get them involved. Once again, because they're involved in the process, because they feel like they've had a choice in it, because they've been engaged in it, then they're much more likely to give it a go and eat it later on. And also, you're then, you know, you're focusing on what they do want. You know, you're getting the good things into them that they do want. And then gradually over time, you can expand on that as well and expand on that repertoire and be like, hey, what's that one? You know, maybe we should try that one, you know, and just introduce some new stuff. So it starts from right at the start. But then obviously once you get them into the house, you know, then you can get them involved, get them cutting stuff up, get them throwing stuff into your blender, you know, get them choosing what sort of sauce they want, you know. You can engage them right through the process. And once again, you know, so by the time you get to the dinner table, you know, they're like ready to go. They're so curious about this thing they've been creating that they're going to give it a crack. They're going to try it out. Well, at the very least, they're going to be much more likely to, you know, at least try it once and see. And so I talk about that as role modeling. I think the routine aspect of it is really important too. You know, we do sit down at the table every night and have dinner. You know, we have our routine in terms of, you know, showers or bath, you know, dinner, a story, bed. You know, we have a set routine, and kids love a routine. You know, often we think that we're being structured with them, but actually they love it. You know, it's really important for them to know what comes next, you know, because they can get quite insecure. They can get quite concerned if it's, you know, that uncertainty they tend not to like. They tend to like to know what's happening, you know, what's going to happen next, what can I expect. And when they know what they expect, they tend to be a lot more settled. It's a lot easier for them. So we do definitely have a routine where we sit down at the table, you know, we talk about what's been going on. You know, I make sure they keep eating. Sometimes the challenge is they just want to talk and not eat. So it's like, no, you got to eat. You got to keep eating. You can talk a little bit, but, you know, but we do have those conversations. We sit around the dinner table, so we do have conversations, and I think that routine of it is really important as well. And it's setting them up for that routine. You know, everything you think about in this, you've really got to think about the long game. You know, not necessarily what are my kids eating right now, but what am I teaching my kids about eating? What am I teaching my kids about food that they're going to carry through with them for a lifetime? So, you know, you want to teach them to love eating healthy food. You don't want to bribe them to eat healthy food. You don't want to nag them to eat healthy food. You don't want to have to hide the food so that you can trick them into it, because that's not going to teach them to love it. That's not going to teach them behaviors and habits that they can carry through with them for the rest of their life. And then similarly, I think with routines, you know, if you can set up a really healthy routine, then that's something they can carry through with them for the rest of their life. And, you know, maybe at some stage they'll lose their way a bit. You know, they'll probably go off the tracks at some stage and want to eat different stuff. And, you know, and that's such a natural part of being a kid, you know. As you grow and develop as a child, you gradually develop your independence, and you gradually realize that you're a separate person from your parents, and you get to make your own choices, and you get to do your own thing. And that's part of being a kid. That's part of growing. So, you know, it's really important for kids to be able to do that. But you know, you hope that because you've set themselves up with those patterns and behaviors, because they know how they feel when they eat healthy stuff, and you've helped explain that to them, you know, you like to think that eventually, as they go forwards, they're gonna shift back to that at some stage.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So Leanne's just said that she loves this because it's conscious parenting. This can be used for other things too, relating the choices they make with how they feel. So that's so true.
And it's so true. And that's the feedback I've been getting from the book, is that the strategies that we talk about in terms of eating healthy stuff, you know, you can use them in terms of exercise, you can use it in terms of mindset, you can use it in terms of just the way you communicate with your kids. So many of the people have been saying that it's just changed the way they're communicating and relating to their kids, which is fantastic. And a lot of people have been saying that they're using the strategies for people who aren't kids too, which is kind of fascinating. So people, you know, you can actually use these same strategies for your husband, for your dad, for your, you know, for your friend. And so a lot of people have been making that feedback as well, that actually it's helped them with other people in their life too.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And then Margaret says, hello, Dr. Brett, any advice for teenagers once they leave the structure of eating with the family after they leave school, example, uni, part-time work, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, with teenagers, if you can keep them to that structure, that's great. You know, I'd really encourage that, you know, but if they can't, you know, if they're at work, if they're still at uni, whatever, then you just have to work around that. You know, you have to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. And so most of the strategies that I've got in the book are not based around that routine. They're based around all the other things you can do. And teenagers, yeah, you've just got to speak their language. You know, you've got to figure out what motivates them. So, you know, the easiest way to do that is just to get curious about them. Look at what they do and ask yourself why they do that. You know, why do they do that? You know, if there's some stuff in their life that they do regularly and consistently, it's like, well, what do they get out of that? What's their driver? You know, and that helps you understand what motivates them, what makes them tick. And so if you can figure out what makes them tick, what motivates them to do one thing, then chances are you can use that to motivate them to do other things. And obviously, as they get older, you know, what they want changes, all right? They get more complex and more advanced in terms of what they want. And they also get more complex and more advanced in terms of how you have to explain to them and show them that what you're suggesting is going to help them get what they want, right? So for my kids, you know, 3 and 5, I can say to them, that's going to help you run faster at Chasey tomorrow. And most of the time, they'll just kind of believe me. You know, I can get them to then eat their broccoli and run across the room and run back. And I can go, wow, that was faster. That's amazing. Well done. You know, and they're like, was it? I'm like, yeah, that was incredible. You know, whereas, you know, once they get to teenagers, and to be honest, Tom already, you know, he's a bit of a deep thinker. He's a bit of an, you know, he's already kind of saying, well, how to prove it? You know, like you gotta You got to prove it to me. So I can tell that within the next couple of years, I'll be having to delve deeper with him. I'll be having to give him research. I'll be having to, use examples. And what I say to people with that is, if you want to convince your kids of something, what you should do is look at how the experts at convincing kids to do something convince kids to do stuff. Right? So when the TV comes on and the McDonald's ad comes on or the Coke ad comes on, right? Look at what they do, right? They use celebrities, right? So find some celebrities. If you wanted to do paleo and your kid's into football, then you talk about Gary Ablett, and the fact that Gary Ablett he's the best footballer in the country and he does paleo because he functions better when he does paleo, So you use the celebrity. They make it fun. They make it look like it's just awesome fun. They make it bright colors. They give it cool names. They use your favorite cartoon character or whatever it is. Teenagers obviously a little bit older, but they'll use the celebrities, they'll use the enjoyment factor. So look at what they do and kind of steal the same tactics. Make it fun for them, make it tasty for them, prove it to them, show them the research. The great thing now is there's so much research supporting that, if you do eat healthier, if you do eat cleaner, less processed food, less sugar, less carbs, they might be, once again, if they're sporty inclined, then you might give them research from someone like Tim Noakes, who's one of the preeminent people in the world, and you can show them the research that he's coming out with and prove to them that it's going to make a difference. So you've just really got to figure out what motivates them and then help show them how eating healthy is going to help them get what they want.
Yeah, great. That's really good. So if anyone has any questions, just pop them in the sidebar and we'll get to them as we go along. So I've got another one here. It says, I find if I don't have the foods that we shouldn't be eating at home, that is what they will mainly eat. They often go to the fridge saying there's no food, so I've made paleo treats made all of the time for them to grab. So
yeah. And that's one of the things, like teenagers and adults to a large degree, we're kind of inherently lazy. So if you make sure that they're surrounded by heaps of great options, and the option is I've got this delicious nut ball in the fridge, that's like beautiful, tasty, great, and it's healthy, or I have to walk down a couple of k's to the shops to get my Mars bar, they're going to be like, well, do you know what? I'll just have the nut ball, Like, so surround them with healthy options, just make it the norm for there just to be heaps of healthy options around, make it easy for them and sort of play on their inherent laziness a little bit, because that absolutely works. I know it works for me. If I make the right decisions at the supermarket, then the decisions I make at home are easier. If stuff gets into my house that I know I shouldn't be eating, I don't have that much willpower. If it's there, I'll probably eat it. But if it's not there, then I'm happy with what I got. It doesn't bother me. I'm not going to get up and go to the shops to get some junk food if I've got some great foods at home that I can eat. So, yeah, make the great decisions at the supermarket instead of having to have the battle at home. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so do you want to maybe tell everybody what a typical, some ideas of meals that you guys have? So like what you'd have for breakfast, what the kids like to predominantly eat and that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very simple in terms of what I eat. I feel a bit sorry for my kids sometimes because I'm a bit boring. Like I'm not a great chef. Yeah. So, breakfast time, a lot of the time it's like some cold meats or some leftover meats, from, if I do dinner, I'll try and cook up a little bit extra. So some cold meats, some leftover meats. They might have some strawberries, some cherry tomatoes, some cucumber, some carrots. Sometimes I'll do a bit of a smoothie. That's what we eat for breakfast a lot of the time, and for many people, that's not breakfast. For us, breakfast is just breakfast. It's just another meal, so we'll have that sort of stuff for breakfast a lot of the time. Every Saturday morning we have pancakes. We love our pancakes on Saturday morning. So really simple recipe. It's like 2 eggs, 1 banana, a little bit of vanilla essence, a little bit of cinnamon. I was having to think then. And blend it up. Usually I do triple that recipe, and that's enough for my kids. Maybe quadruple if I'm joining in. And then a little bit of maple syrup on top, a little bit of coconut cream on top. That's a really typical, that's our go-to breakfast every Saturday morning. Sometimes I'll mix it up. The other morning I had a whole bunch of paleo forage, which I get from my mate Damien Christoph does that one. So we had a little bit of that, made a little bit of almond milk. That was breakfast the other morning. Sometimes I'll do, a bulk batch of maybe like a frittata, or sometimes I'll do an omelette. I haven't done as much of those lately, actually, but I think I might do them. The kids actually asked for that the other day, so I might do that again soon. But, just simple stuff like that, nothing complicated. Their school lunches are very similar to the breakfast I just described. It's like some cold meats, some fruits, and some vegetables. I usually give them a banana and an apple as well. And so that's what they generally have for school lunches. They had their birthday recently, so I made up a few extra treats. I made up some little pizzas. We do some nut balls. So if I've made up some nut balls, Tom and Charlotte's school, as long as it does have peanuts in it, they're fine with it, which is fine by me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can make nut balls and put them in there. Sometimes I'll do like a paleo banana bread, or a brownie, or so sometimes on the weekend I'll make up something like that, and I'll get that. I'll stick that in the lunchbox as well. But a lot of the time we don't have that either. And then dinners, once again, pretty simple. Like, as I said, I try and let the kids have a bit of a say. Just sort of once a week, each of them gets to choose what we want to have. Pretty much every single time, Tom chooses some paleo sausages, sweet potato chips, and broccolini. He chooses that basically every single time. He loves that. We've got a great little butcher just around the corner that do some awesome sausages. So I do that. And then Charlotte pretty much every time chooses honey mustard chicken and salad. So that's a recipe from George Bryant, the Civilized Caveman. He's a great honey mustard chicken recipe that's just an absolute go-to for us, super easy. So we do that. And then, then sometimes I get to choose. And so we might have, some lamb chops or some steak, or and usually just with a few simple vegetables. We do, sweet potato chips and broccolini. That's like our go-to. That's sort of just, if I don't want to think about what we do, we have sweet potato chips, broccolini, and some sort of meat. And we do that a lot. So that's pretty much what, if I do dessert, once again, if I've made something up, I might have made, as I said, brownies, banana bread. Sometimes I'll do some raw chocolate. Sometimes I'll have a smoothie. Sometimes we'll just have some fruit. Sometimes in summer I'll freeze some fruit, so it might be a sorbet just from frozen berries is often one we'll do. That's pretty much a day for us. If we snack in between, if we're going somewhere and I want to have a bit of a snack, it'll usually be just a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts. Not much more complicated than that. They mostly drink water or my kombucha, usually diluted in water. Because they don't love the taste of it. I probably let it go a bit too long and let it get a bit too bitter most of the time. So usually I dilute that with water. I do mine with coconut water as well, which they love coconut water, so that's nice. And sometimes I'll give them coconut water. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go to the Paleo Cafe.
Yeah, that's right. I think keeping it simple is definitely best, especially when you've got kids too, because you've got so much other stuff going on and busy lives and everything like that. So, there's nothing wrong with sitting down and having meat, sweet potato chips and broccolini. That's a really good meal for them. So
keep it easy. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I think that's, I think often we overcomplicate it when it comes to doing paleo, because we look around and what I always say is, there's nothing exciting about meat and 3 veg. Like, if I filled my Instagram page with meat and 3 veg, no one would follow me. No one would be interested. And so what people tend to share on social media and in the media and, all that sort of stuff is the different ones. It's like, well, today we tried, bone marrow, or today I'm eating crickets, or, today I've made this triple-decker cheesecake, And so people think that that's what paleo is. Oh, well, if I'm not doing all these amazing things, then I'm not doing it right. When in actual fact, 99% of it is just doing the simple things really well. And so I think we can overcomplicate it and think we have to do too much, when most of the results you get will be just from doing the simple things well.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And when I talk about meal planning, usually I say, get out your 3 or 4 staples that you always have every week. And in our house, again, it's like paleo sausages, bolognese, and maybe a meat and veg kind of thing, and then save the weekend for recreating something a little bit different. Get the recipe book out and try something you haven't tried for a while. And if you have that kind of each week, it makes the week a lot easier for you, rather than having to go, oh, it's Tuesday night and I've got to recreate paleo lasagna. How am I going to do that? It's not necessary.
And we do the bolognese. That I do a bolognese sauce quite a lot. I've got a good recipe for that one that works well. And there's zucchini noodles. So yeah, like typically I don't really meal plan, to be perfectly honest. But most of the time I just go to the shops and I make sure that I've got a couple of different meats. You know, some chicken, some paleo sausages, and a couple of different meats. I always make sure I've got sweet potatoes. I always make sure I've got avocados. You know, I always make sure I've got broccolini, eggs, some spinach. And as long as I've sort of got the basics, then I'm pretty good. And, you know, I might need to pop down to the shops and get, you know, one or two extra things depending on what I'm having that night. But most of the time, if I've got those basics, I'm always pretty safe that I can do something, you know. And you know, I've always got the honey and the mustard ready for that recipe, and the garlic ready for those recipes, just so that, you know, don't get in trouble from Charlotte. But, you know, you just have those basics there and you're always pretty right. You can always chuck something together. And this is coming from me, who's like the least creative chef ever. So if I can do it, you can.
Good. So your new ebook is called Nourish Without Nagging, and
Yes.
I'm just going to pop a link up if everyone wants to have a look at it. They can go there, and all your other books are there as well that you were talking about earlier.
They're all there.
And it's a great book. I was just saying earlier, I've read it twice, so I'm well versed
I'm
in
impressed. You know, the biggest fear when you write a book is that no one's going to read it. You know, because you read the stats, and it's like, of all the books people buy, they only read about like 10% of them, or something ridiculously low. So, and of that, an even smaller percentage actually get to the end of it. So the fact you've gone through it twice makes me immensely happy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, I really like how you've got the tips at the front, the 10 tips that are like kind of like common mistakes, and then you're like, now I don't want to focus anymore on that. We've got all those mistakes out of the way, and now we're going to focus on what it is that you need to do that's, you know, positive. And I think that's a really great way to go about it.
Well, it's always so much easier to add stuff in than take stuff away, isn't it? It's so much easier to focus on one thing I can start doing better rather than the things you need to stop doing. So if you just focus on some things you can add in, it makes a massive difference. And you know, the great thing about kids is, you know, you've got the next 50, 70, 100 years, you know, of their life to look forward to. And so, you know, there's not a rush. You know, as long as you're heading in the right direction, you've got time to get them to where you want to be. You know, so if you're just adding in one little bit at a time, then, you know, you're going to make a massive difference over the course of their lifetime, which is so much better than trying to change everything at once and having it not work. You know, you're much better off, you know, what direction you're heading in is far more important than where you're at. That's what I reckon.
Definitely. Yeah. And so if anyone's got any questions, we've got about 15 minutes. So pop them in there and make sure you get to ask Dr. Brett live. And, you know, ask him anything. Could be about paleo, could be about kids, could be about cricket. I know that's one of his favourite subjects.
I talked about that forever. I got changed because I've just come from cricket training. So I put my hat on so you wouldn't see my sweaty head. And Can I tell him
Leah? Hang on. I was just going to say, Leanne just said that she's told her husband that Gary is paleo, and he said, "Yeah, I know." And so she's using the strategy on him right now. So
I love that. Yeah. There you go. It works great. Good. I use that one all the time for the kids in my practice. I'm like, you know, Gary Ablett? They're like, yeah. What did you know? He's paleo. They're like, what? Yeah. You know, you want to play football like Gary Ablett? Well, you know. It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about the Melbourne Demons because they're not going so well, but they're all paleo too. But yeah, we have to wait till they climb up the ladder a bit more until we start talking about them.
That's fair enough. So you've got some exciting news that you want to tell everyone. So
we've just today got everything ready and organised and finalised for our next cave camp. So I know you've been to cave camp, Leah.
I've been to cave camp. Yeah.
We had a ball at cave camp. So we've got a new location now. We're actually going to be in the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. And it's this stunning, stunning location, beautiful surroundings, hills, beautiful hiking trails. It's actually near Wilpena Pound, which is a really famous sort of outback South Australia. And it's a great location. It's the retreat that's run there called Pitchy Ritchie Park with a couple of friends of mine who do amazing paleo stuff. They do some of the best kombucha I've ever tasted, actually. And they're going to do a workshop on how to do that at cave camp, which I'm a bit excited about because I haven't quite figured out I haven't mastered the second ferment yet, and they've mastered it. So I'm going to get them to teach me that. But anyway, it's going to be in the Flinders Ranges in South Australia, and we're actually organising a bus for everyone. So all the people who want to come from interstate, they're going to get picked up from the airport and from the city by me in a bus, and we're going to have a bit of a road trip. So it's going to be a blast.
That's awesome.
And they can pick my brain.
Sing along.
Yeah, sing along, absolutely. And you know, they can pick my brain. They got 4.5 hours of picking my brain, so we can get up to this beautiful nature outdoors. And yeah, it's gonna be amazing. We do some barefoot running workshops. I'm gonna run a couple of workshops and talks throughout the weekend. There'll be some beautiful hiking. We'll do some exercise. It'll just be. It's a great. I've been there myself, and I love the location. I love the retreat. So it's gonna be awesome. So people should check that out.
So what date is it that you're gonna?
Oh, you can get me stumped now. It's early May. I think it might be the weekend. I think it might be the weekend of the 6th of May.
Okay.
So, and there's an early bird special on now, so it's like $7.95 instead of $9.95 if they sign up in the next few weeks. So if you're thinking of coming, there's only 30 spots because that's all we can fit in at the camp there. So it's going to be really limited. You guys are basically the first ones to find out. So
cool.
If you're keen on coming, make sure you jump on, grab a spot because as I said, there's only 30 spots, and yeah, they're not going to last long because it's going to be heaps of fun.
And is that on your website that they can find that, or?
I don't even know if it's on my website yet. That's how new it is. But I know that if you put in Cave Camp 2016 and Eventbrite, then the Eventbrite page will come up.
Okay, cool. And we can probably link to that after the show as well. We'll send out that with the replay so that people can go and have a look.
Me to find? I'll even do it now. How's that? I'll find it.
Okay, that sounds good.
And I'll put it in here for you because I can do that.
Yeah, cool. So if anyone's got any questions, pop them in now because we've got 10 minutes. And yeah, any questions? Just
If you don't ask questions, I'll just start talking about cricket for 15 minutes.
Quick, someone ask a question. I'll have to think of something. Yeah.
So there you go. I've chucked the link in there for Cave Camp. So if you have any questions about Cave Camp, don't be afraid to ask. But,
we had the best time. Cave Camp was so much fun. Such a great experience. And yeah, we had Emma and Carla at our Cave Camp from the Merrymaker Sisters. So that was a lot
they
of
were
giggling.
A ball, weren't they?
Yeah.
We had some great campfire conversations. In fact, one of the things that we'll be doing at Cave Camp is there's an Indigenous elder who comes to the Cave Camp, and she's going to cook roo-tail for everyone around the campfire, and then she's going to tell stories. And it's amazing. She's such a legend. She's such a just unique individual and such an authentic individual. And it's really cool. It's so much fun. So she made this roo-tail, and we made it into these like lettuce basket sort of things that were just delicious. And I'd never eaten roo-tail before, so that was pretty cool.
And did she make a broth out of that as well, or was it just the?
No, there wasn't. They didn't do a broth out of that. It was just the meat for that one. So, but it was traditionally cooked in the coals, the whole works. It was great. It was very cool. Auntie Elsie, I think her name was. She was a legend. It was so funny.
Awesome. Oh, look, Margaret saved us so we don't have to talk about cricket. And she's asked if you give your kids broth or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love doing broth. So once again, the last couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months, I haven't done broth as much. I'm not quite sure why. I was just saying that the other day. I'm due to do a broth. But I love doing broths. The slow cooker is probably the other one that I do use a lot. I probably use it a lot more in winter, I think, and probably broths I think are the same. I tend to do them more in winter, probably just because it's a bit of a comfort food when it's a little bit cold. But yeah, definitely broths and definitely slow cookers. You know, one of my favorite ones to do with and for the family is really easy is, you know, like Friday afternoons, I do an afternoon shift sort of from 4 till 6, and then I've got the kids that night. And so often what I'll do is I'll put a chicken into the slow cooker with all the vegetables, just chuck the whole chicken in, slow cook that, pull it out that night for dinner, you know, rip off all the chicken flesh or most of the chicken flesh, and then chuck it back in and let it go for a bit longer for the broth. So you get like your dinner out of it, but then you also get the broth out of it. Yeah. And that's a great way to sort of cover, you know, kind of a couple of meals at once. You kill two birds with one stone. So I love to do that. And yeah, definitely I prefer beef broth to chicken broth. I'm a bit more of a beef broth kind of guy. So I do the beef broths as well. And it's just great. It's so fulfilling. You feel so good after it. You always just feel great after a broth. So yeah, I definitely do that with the kids and I love it. Yeah.
Well, I was in Sydney on the weekend and I went to the new broth bar and larder.
No way.
Yeah, in Bronte. It was amazing. I had the best cup of broth I've ever tasted. But do you know what they had there? They had frozen the broth into cubes and then put it into popsicles and into smoothies. Yeah. And so like very subtle taste in the popsicle. You can't taste it, but it's still got the goodness of the broth in there for the kids to have. And I saw a little girl came in and a dad got her a smoothie and it had broth in it, and she was just drinking it like it wasn't big deal.
That's the great thing with broth for kids. You know, great way to start introducing it is, you know, you just put a little bit of it into your soup, you put a little bit of it into your pasta sauce, you can just chuck it into all of those other things that you're giving them and just sort of sneak a little bit in that way. You know, as I said before, you know, doing the gelatin lollies as well is a great way to get a bit of gelatin in there. So simple. They're so easy. Once again, it's a great one to get your kids engaged with. You know, you take them to the markets or the supermarket or wherever you go, like, what color do you want your lollies to be? You know, okay, well, let's figure out which fruits we need to put in there to make it that color. So, you know, last time we did it, we did some blueberries, we did some strawberries, we did some kiwi fruits, and we did some mangoes. So if you do kiwi fruits, you have to put more gelatin in with the kiwi fruit, like triple the amount to get it to solidify. I have no idea why. Anyway, so we ended up with like purple, red, green, and orange gelatin lollies, and they were great. And the kids loved that. It was just so bright, so fun, so great colors. They taste great. You can't go wrong with those. They're so much fun.
Yeah, that's great. And talking about, you know, putting the broth in other things as well, I like doing in your Thermomix, you do the meatloaf, and the kids love that one because you know, it's like basically the mince wrapped in bacon. And I just don't put the cheese and stuff in the middle of it. And then I do, as the mushroom sauce, I do the bone broth as the mushroom sauce and then pour that over the top, and it's just amazing. So you should definitely try that one.
That sounds amazing. You might have to send that one to me, Leah. Can you send me that recipe? Because that sounds great.
Yeah, it's just
I might put that in my newsletter too.
Yeah, it's just an adaptation of the Everyday Cookbook one. So yeah.
You have to give. I need recipes, Leah. I need to have the recipe to do it. I am that simple, right? Like I just literally, I can't cook. I just get the recipe and follow it step by step and do exactly what I'm told. Although I'm getting slightly better. I'm getting to the stage where I can slightly modify some recipes sometimes, or pick non-paleo recipes and make them paleo. I'm getting a little bit better, but generally I just get the recipe and I just do exactly what I'm told.
Yeah. So Leanne saying thank you both so much for your time. Thanks, Leanne, for listening. And she's saying Cave Camp's been on her bucket list for a while. She just did the Wellness Breakthrough.
Leanne's awesome. We had a great chat at the Wellness Breakthrough. So I saw the name there and I thought, that must be that Leanne. I'm sure that's Leanne. So she's awesome. We had a great time at the Wellness Breakthrough. So I hope she comes to Cave Camp because I reckon we had some really good chats there around the campfire. So yeah, that'd be fun. I hope you do.
It's definitely something to put on. Definitely do not put it on the bucket list. Like it's an actual, you must do it.
Yeah, put it in the calendar. Book it in while you got the deal.
Paleo experience you must have.
It's so great to just immerse yourself in it for a weekend and to be surrounded by like-minded people. It's just so nice. And do you know what's great? Is for a whole weekend, you just sit down and you eat food and you don't have to ask anyone to remove anything. You don't have to check the ingredients. You can actually just relax and have a meal and know that it's all great. And that's wonderful. And the other thing is no one judges you. No one is sitting there going, what are you eating? What's that? That looks a bit weird. Everyone's just on the same page. You're just surrounded by your tribe. And it's so nice just to have that for a weekend and just to feel normal. I know that sounds bad, but you know what I mean? Just to feel normal for a weekend. Like it's not that weird. This is actually normal. This is actually the way we do it. And it's great to be surrounded with that tribe and that community and just to really, expand your knowledge, to learn new stuff, but to really ingrain stuff that you can take away, but also just to be surrounded in that environment with those awesome people. We have lots of fun, don't we? These paleo people, both our cave camps we've done, have just been, I've made friends at each of them that I've kept ever since, so it's just a wonderful event and a wonderful experience.
Yeah, definitely. So Margaret's saying, thanks to both of you, some great ideas tonight. Appreciate your time. I'm glad that you had got some ideas there, Margaret. And Heather's saying, Heather's saying, thank you guys. I really enjoyed this. So yes, thanks everyone so much for listening and participating. And thanks Dr. Brett Hill for joining us. We've had an excellent chat and some, really great tips there. And I would definitely get the book if you're thinking about getting it. It's, I've read it twice. It's a great read. And also Cave Camp up there on that list too.
In the calendar, yeah. We'll look forward to seeing you there. It's so much fun. And we'll have a blast on the bus. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be hilarious, I reckon.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, it's making me laugh now just thinking about it.
But I won't throw water on you, Leah. I won't throw water on you this time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. I do remember that.
With his evil laugh.
Pranks going on at the last cave camp, and I did end up with a fair bit of water on me. You were just jealous because I was in the winning team and our shelter was the best shelter. Yeah.
It's true. Your shelter was far superior to ours. It's true.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.